As Old as Time, Part 3. Belle's Nightmare. They took Belle to a truly frightening room. It smelled of antiseptic and alcohol and the slightly sweet overtone of nitrous oxide, and also other things, meant to cover up the stink of fear and bodily fluids. It's a prep room, she dimly realized. A half-dozen wheeled tables were arranged to accept bulk quantities of new patients, awaiting whatever horrible surgeries d'Arc had in store for them. The counter nearby had rows of shining, spotless scalpels, and knives laid out neatly in a white linen towel, along with one unscientific-looking knife seemingly carved from black glass, curvy and sinuous like an evil snake. "No, what is this place? Let me go!" Belle began to struggle in a blind panic. Now, calm yourself," the horrible female nurse said, grabbing her ankles with surprisingly strong and cold fingers as the man lifted Belle up by her torso. He arranged the struggling girl almost gently on the nearest table, holding her down with one meaty arm while drawing up and tightening straps around her with the other. The table was cool under her body, but not cold. A soft fleece protected her from the metal surface. This was somehow more terrifying than everything else, that steps had been taken to provide comfort for the patients, as if this were actually a place of succor and healing. Once Belle was secured, the woman draped a gag loosely over her mouth. It smelled of chemicals, and she tried not to breathe, recognizing the foul tang of chloroform. Then they wheeled her into the operating theater. Around the edges of the small and spotlessly clean room were machines that looked like Maurice's own inventions, but shrunken and horribly malformed, like they had been sucked through an evil mirror and came out the other side utterly twisted for foul purposes. The largest one had bellows and pumps and tiny versions of pistons above a neat row of bell jars. Belle fought against the numbing influence of the drug on the gag, kicking and trying to scream. She wanted nothing to do with these machines. Anything was better than whatever they hinted at. Being knocked on the head, beaten on the feet, anything. Traditional torture. "Ah, there you are," a clipped and aristocratic voice called out. Belle turned her head as far as she could to look. It was d'Arc, the shallow-faced and skeletal head of the asylum. He was well known to the villagers despite his rare trips down into town. Frightening when he was trying to be pleasant in broad daylight, here in the depths of the asylum and in its darkness, he was positively horrible. "I'm so sorry about all this," he said, coming forward to regard her. "I think we can be fairly certain you are pure and free of the vile, unnatural corruption of the supernatural, but I have to be absolutely certain." "What is this?" Belle demanded, trying to force the gag out of the way with her lips and chin. "Is this for Gaston, so I am pure enough to be his wife?" "Gaston?" d'Arc asked, surprised. His eyebrows crawled up his scalp like two beetles trying to flee his tongue. "That foolish bull of a boy? Please, he is no more than a pawn. He thinks I approve of his silly wedding plans." "Thinks?" Belle's mind raced. The way he phrased it seemed like d'Arc and Gaston had some sort of long-term relationship. Aside from the old man's occasional visits to the Hunter's Tavern, she had no idea they really knew each other. "I needed someone to feed me information about you and your father from time to time, to make sure you weren't up to your mother's old tricks, or that your father hadn't recovered his memory and gone back to seeing old friends, unsavory friends." "Les Charmants," Belle said slowly. "You mean Les Charmants?" "I do," d'Arc said, sucking in his cheeks with disappointment. "Have you learned of such abominations? That's a pity. I had hoped you would remain completely free of any taint of them." "Why do you care about us?" Belle demanded. "Why not anyone else in town?" "Let's just say that I do particularly care about you and Maurice in my own way. Also, I do care about everyone in the town," d'Arc added with concern. "But everyone else is fairly safe, normal, set in their ways, boring and uneducated, but harmless." "Except for Monsieur Levi," Belle spat. "You burned his shop down." "I did nothing of the sort," d'Arc snapped. "I suspect that was the idiot Gaston, when he went to find Maurice. I have nothing against books. I love books. Books are the remedy to superstition and magic. I was so pleased with your education, your brilliance, Belle. It's a pity we have to do this, but we must be sure." He took off his waistcoat, folded it neatly, and handed it out to the nurse. Then he drew her over the scariest looking machine and began to pump at a foot pedal on it. No, Monsieur d'Arc, please. Shh, now, d'Arc said, placing a metal cup with a tube attached to her mouth. Belle began to scream. She thrashed and tore at the leather straps, throwing herself from side to side. Blackness began to drip over her senses.